She accidentally hugged a millionaire, and what happened next left everyone speechless. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain poured steadily over the quiet college town of Austin, Texas. The streets shimmered under the streetlights, and puddles rippled as cars passed. Mark Davis, a 23-year-old law student, hurried down the sidewalk, his backpack heavy with textbooks and unpaid bills. His shoes squelched with every step, but the sound of his phone ringing stopped him in place. "Mark Davis speaking," he said, breathless. A calm, commanding female voice answered. "Mr. Davis, this is Eleanor Brooks. I believe we should meet. It is regarding your financial situation." Mark frowned. "I am sorry. Who are you? How do you know?" "I know enough," she interrupted. "Meet me at Brooks Bistro at 7 p.m. It is important." The call ended. No explanation, no time to process. By the time Mark reached the small cafe, rain had turned his jacket nearly transparent. Inside, the warm light glowed gold against polished wood. At a corner table sat Eleanor Brooks, poised and elegant, her silver hair styled perfectly, her pearls gleaming. She was the kind of woman who carried silence like a crown. "Mr. Davis," she greeted softly. "Please, sit." Mark hesitated, then took the chair across from her. "You said this was about my finances. How do you—" She placed her teacup down gently. "I know about your debts, your mother's medical bills, and your sister's tuition. You are drowning, Mr. Davis. I am here to offer you a way out." Mark blinked, unsure if this was real. "And what exactly are you offering?" Eleanor leaned forward slightly, her eyes steady. "Marriage." For a moment, the sound of the rain filled the space between them. Mark let out a nervous laugh. "I am sorry, what?" "You heard me," she said, her tone unwavering. "I want you to marry me. This is not about love. It is a contract. I will pay off your debts, provide stability for your family, and in return, you will be my husband." Mark stared at her, half in disbelief. "Why me? You do not even know me." "Because you are young, intelligent, and desperate enough to consider this. I do not need affection, Mr. Davis. I need companionship and privacy. My name attracts attention I no longer want." He shook his head slowly. "This is insane." Eleanor smiled faintly. "Think of it as mutual survival. You need money. I need a partner who will not fall in love or betray me. Everything will be written in a contract." He wanted to stand up, to walk out and pretend this conversation never happened. But when she mentioned his mother's failing health and his sister's unpaid tuition, the defiance in him faltered. That night, Mark sat at the kitchen table of their small apartment. His mother's cough echoed from her bedroom. On the table lay a stack of medical bills and his phone screen glowing with a single message from Eleanor. "Tomorrow, same place. Bring your decision." Rain tapped against the window as he stared at the papers. Pride battled with desperation. Finally, he whispered, "Dad, what would you do?" No answer came, only the steady hum of the storm outside. By morning, Mark was standing once again in Brooks Bistro. Eleanor was already there, stirring her coffee with calm precision. "Well?" she asked without looking up. Mark took a deep breath. "I will do it." She looked up then, her expression unreadable but her eyes softening just for a second. "Good. The ceremony will be small, quiet, no press, no family, only signatures and a vow." Mark nodded, though his heart pounded like thunder. Somewhere between the logic and the madness, he realized his life had just changed forever. The small courthouse in downtown Austin was quiet that morning. A pale light filtered through the tall windows, turning the dust in the air into floating silver. Mark Davis stood near the front bench in a suit that was one size too big, his hands trembling slightly. He had borrowed it from a friend. Across the aisle, Eleanor Brooks waited calmly, dressed in a pearl gray suit, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. The ceremony lasted less than 10 minutes. No flowers, no music. Only the echo of the judge's steady voice reading the vows. When it was time to answer, Mark's throat went dry. "I do," he said softly. The words barely left his lips, yet they sealed his fate. When the papers were signed, Eleanor turned to him and offered a polite smile. "Welcome to your new life, Mr. Davis." Her tone was measured, almost professional. A chauffeur opened the door outside, and Mark followed her silently to the black sedan waiting in the rain. As the car drove through the winding hills, Mark stared out the window. The city blurred into the green edge of the countryside. Finally, the car slowed before a set of iron gates that opened to a long driveway lined with oak trees. Beyond them stood Brooks Estate, an enormous mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. Marble columns rose from the ground, and the windows gleamed like mirrors. Inside, the air smelled faintly of jasmine and old wood. Chandeliers glowed overhead. Portraits of ancestors watched from the walls. Eleanor's heels clicked against the marble as she led him through the hall. "This will be your room," she said, stopping at a heavy oak door. "The east wing is private. I do not like visitors there. Dinner is at 7. Mark nodded. "Understood." Left alone, he looked around the room. It was larger than his entire apartment. A massive bed with crisp white sheets. A mahogany desk by the window. Everything was perfect, but it felt cold like a display, not a place for living. He placed his suitcase down and sat on the edge of the bed, running a hand over the fabric. It felt unreal. At dinner, Eleanor sat at the far end of the long dining table. The distance between them seemed endless. Silver cutlery gleamed under the chandelier. The meal roasted duck, mashed potatoes, and asparagus was plated like art. Mark was too nervous to eat. Eleanor cut her food carefully, then looked up. "You are not eating. I am just not used to this," he admitted. She set her knife down. "You will adjust. The staff will treat you with respect. In return, you will follow the terms of our agreement." Mark straightened his back. "I understand. I just want to make sure I do this right." "Good." She reached for a small folder beside her plate and slid it across the table. "Read this tonight. It is our contract, written clearly. 3 main terms." Mark opened it, his eyes tracing the printed lines. Rule 1. There will be no romantic involvement of any kind. Rule 2. Public appearances must be attended together when scheduled. Rule 3. Personal lives remain separate. No interference. He looked up slowly. "You thought of everything." Eleanor's lips curved into a small smile. "I always do." After dinner, Mark walked alone through the empty halls. Every step echoed like a reminder of how far he had traveled from his old life. He paused by a large painting of a lake under moonlight. The plaque beneath it read, "Solitude, 1998. He whispered to himself. "Seems fitting." Later, in his room, he sat by the window watching rain begin to fall again. The same rain that had started this entire story. He thought of his mother and sister, safe for now. Their debts would be paid. But what had he become in the process? Down the hall, Eleanor stood on the balcony of her private study, looking out into the storm. The wind moved her silver hair slightly. She held a glass of wine, but barely touched it. On her desk lay a framed photograph of a younger man, her late husband, smiling beside her. She traced the edge of the frame with her finger, then turned it face down. "Practical," she murmured to herself. "This arrangement is practical." Yet somewhere beneath her calm exterior, the echo of loneliness lingered like the rain tapping against the glass. In another room, Mark finally closed the contract, exhaled, and whispered, "I will keep my word." But even as he said it, something in his chest shifted in unease, a question he could not yet name. The storm outside grew louder, washing over the mansion like a warning, as if the walls themselves knew that this marriage, born from necessity, was about to change them both in ways neither could predict. Morning sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the Brooks estate, painting golden lines across the marble floor. Mark Davis woke to quietness so complete that it made him uneasy. In the world he had known, silence always meant something was wrong. He dressed quickly, buttoning the crisp white shirt a servant had left for him, and stepped into the hall. At breakfast, Eleanor Brooks was already seated, reading the newspaper. Her silver hair caught the morning light like polished glass. She gestured toward the seat opposite her. "Good morning, Mr. Davis. Sit, eat." Mark sat down, unsure of how to act. The table was filled with fruit, eggs, toast, and coffee, arranged with the precision of a photograph. He hesitated before speaking. "About the contract, there were a few parts I wanted to clarify." Eleanor folded the paper neatly and looked at him with that same calm, lawyer-like focus. "Go ahead. In public, we act as husband and wife. But here, at home, what are the boundaries?" Her lips curved into a small, deliberate smile. "Simple. You live in your wing. I live in mine. We share meals when necessary. Beyond that, you are free to do as you please. But remember, our marriage must appear genuine to the outside world. That means events, photographs, the occasional dinner party. Can you handle that?" Mark nodded. "Yes, I can handle that." "Good," she said. "Because the first event is tomorrow night, a charity gala for the Brooks Foundation. You will stand beside me, smile, and say as little as possible." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Tailors arrived to measure him for a suit. A stylist appeared to tame his unruly hair. He tried to protest, but the staff worked with quiet efficiency, treating him like another appointment on a schedule. By evening, he hardly recognized the man in the mirror. The reflection stared back in a sleek black tuxedo, jaw clean-shaven, shoulders squared. Eleanor passed by the open door, her perfume lingering faintly in the air. "Better," she said softly. "Now you look like you belong here." Quote. Mark wanted to reply that looks could not buy belonging, but he held his tongue. That night he could not sleep. He sat by the window, the vast gardens outside glowing under moonlight. His phone buzzed once his sister's message. "Mom's feeling better. They said the bills are paid." "Thank you, Mark." He smiled faintly, relief flooding his chest. Whatever this arrangement was, at least it had meaning. The following evening, the gala unfolded like a scene from another world. Crystal chandeliers sparkled. Waiters in black uniforms glided between guests. Cameras flashed as Austin's elite gathered to toast philanthropy and power. Eleanor entered the ballroom first, commanding the room without saying a word. When she placed her hand on Mark's arm, conversations softened. Every eye turned toward them. "This is my husband, Mark Davis," she announced. Her voice was smooth as silk, practiced. "He prefers to stay out of the spotlight, but I insisted tonight." Quote. Mark nodded politely, shaking hands, smiling on cue. The weight of every glance pressed against his chest. He had never been surrounded by so much wealth, so many polished smiles hiding curiosity. During a brief pause, Eleanor leaned close enough for him to hear her whisper, "Keep your posture straight. Confidence is currency here." "Yes, ma'am," he whispered back. The evening carried on with speeches and applause. When a reporter approached, Mark's instinct was to step back, but Eleanor's hand tightened slightly on his arm. "Just nod," she murmured. He did as told. After the event, as guests filtered out and the music faded, Eleanor finally allowed herself to exhale. "You did well," she said, removing a diamond pin from her hair. "You looked the part." Mark smiled faintly. "That is what this is, right? A part to play." She paused at the foot of the staircase. "Yes, and you played it convincingly." Quote. He should have left it there, but something about her tone, soft, almost tired, made him add quietly, "You do not have to act with me all the time, you know." For the first time, she looked uncertain. "Acting is easier than honesty," she said, then turned and climbed the stairs, her footsteps fading into silence. Later that night, Mark walked through the garden alone. The air smelled of rain and roses. The mansion behind him glowed faintly, a world of wealth that still did not feel like his. He looked up at the endless Texas sky and whispered to himself, "I wonder who she really is when no one is watching." From her balcony above, Eleanor stood by the window, unseen, watching him through the glass. For a brief moment, her eyes softened. She whispered into the quiet, And I wonder who you are when you stop pretending you do not care. The wind carried their words away, but the distance between them felt just a little smaller. The contract had rules, boundaries, and clear lines. Yet beneath the polished manners and rehearsed smiles, something fragile had already begun to stir, something neither of them dared to name. The following morning, the Brooks estate came alive with movement. Gardeners trimmed the hedges, staff hurried through corridors, and the hum of quiet order filled the air. Mark Davis had begun to learn the rhythm of the house, the way the sun reached the marble floors at precisely 7:40, the scent of jasmine that drifted in from the courtyard, and the faint echo of Eleanor Brooks's footsteps whenever she moved from room to room. He had also learned that silence in this house was not peace, it was a wall. At breakfast, Eleanor spoke without looking up from her planner. "The board meeting for Brooks Foundation is this Friday. You will come with me." Quote. Mark hesitated. "Do I have to say anything?" "Only if someone asks. You are there to be seen, not heard." He nodded, hiding his discomfort behind a polite smile. "Understood." She glanced up briefly, eyes softening for a fraction of a second. "And after that, we will attend the annual investor gala in Dallas. You will need another tuxedo. I will have the tailor come tomorrow." Mark chuckled lightly. "I never thought my biggest problem would be owning too many tuxedos." Gummins. A hint of amusement flickered across her face, gone almost instantly. "Get used to it." Later that day, Mark wandered into the library, a vast room lined with shelves that reached the ceiling. He ran his fingers along the spines of first editions, the faint scent of leather and old paper grounding him. A maid entered quietly, setting a cup of coffee on the side table. "Mrs. Brooks prefers her afternoons quiet," she said gently. "But she has noticed you reading here lately. She said you can borrow whatever you like." He smiled in surprise. "Thank you." That evening, he found Eleanor in her study, reviewing documents under the warm glow of a desk lamp. The room looked softer than usual. The curtains were half open, letting in the fading orange of sunset. "Eleanor," he said cautiously, stepping closer. "Thank you for letting me use the library." She looked up from her papers. "It is your house too now. You do not need my permission." Quote. "Sometimes it does not feel that way," he admitted. "I feel like a visitor." Eleanor leaned back slightly, studying him. "Visitors do not sit through foundation meetings. You are part of this arrangement, Mr. Davis. Do not mistake structure for distance." Mark smiled faintly. "Structure is distance with nicer furniture." For a second, something almost like laughter escaped her. "You are more perceptive than I expected." "Go." He hesitated, then asked quietly, "Why me, really? You could have chosen anyone to stand beside you. Why someone like me?" She was silent for a moment, her gaze turning distant. "Because you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who was not afraid to start over." Mark did not press further, but that night those words stayed with him. 2 days later, they stood together at the Brooks Foundation meeting. Mark sat beside her at the long conference table, his back straight, hands folded. The room was filled with executives, investors, and advisors. He said nothing, just as she had instructed, but he watched her command the discussion with calm authority. Every word from Eleanor carried weight. Her voice was firm but never cruel, her logic flawless. When the meeting ended, one of the board members, a sharp-eyed man named Reynolds, leaned toward Mark with a smirk. "Quite the catch, huh? You have no idea how many people would trade places with you." Mark smiled politely, but the comment lingered like a stain. As they left the building, Eleanor noticed his silence. "Do not let them get to you," she said quietly. "They live off whispers. We live off discipline." "I am still getting used to being whispered about," he said. "Then stop listening," she replied, stepping into the car. That night, back at the estate, the air felt lighter somehow. Eleanor poured herself a glass of wine, and to Mark's surprise, handed him one too. "To surviving another board meeting," she said. He raised his glass. "To pretending we belong." Their eyes met across the rim of the glasses, and for a moment, the air between them shifted, softened. Then, Eleanor looked away, her voice quieter. "You belong more than you think." Quote. The clink of their glasses echoed through the vast empty hall, marking the first time since their marriage that the silence between them no longer felt like a wall, but like an open door neither of them had yet dared to cross. The next evening arrived with a low hum of thunder outside and the faint scent of rain drifting through the open balcony doors. Mark Davis stood before a mirror in his room, straightening his tie for the third time. Tonight was the Dallas Investor Gala, Eleanor's biggest public appearance of the year, and his first test in front of her entire circle of influence. He tried to slow his breathing, but the weight of the tuxedo felt heavier than usual. A soft knock echoed at the door. When he opened it, Eleanor Brooks stood there. She was wearing an elegant black gown that shimmered with every movement, her silver hair pinned neatly, a single diamond pendant resting at her throat. For a moment, Mark forgot to breathe. "You look incredible," he said, almost under his breath. Her gaze flickered up to his. "And you look presentable," she replied smoothly, but there was the faintest trace of warmth behind her composure. "Come, the car is waiting." The gala was held in a grand ballroom draped with gold and crystal. The sound of clinking glasses mixed with the murmur of conversation. Cameras flashed as soon as they entered, and Eleanor's hand slipped effortlessly into the crook of Mark's arm. To anyone watching, they looked like the perfect couple, poised, confident, and untouchable. As they moved through the crowd, Eleanor introduced him to investors and friends of the foundation. Mark smiled, shook hands, and nodded when appropriate. Yet beneath the polished exterior, he noticed how every greeting seemed to come with an undercurrent of curiosity. People studied him the way they might study a new exhibit, interested, but doubtful of its authenticity. During dinner, the conversation shifted to business forecasts and upcoming projects. Mark listened quietly, only speaking when asked. One of the older investors raised a glass toward him. "To Mrs. Brooks and her new husband," the man said with a grin. "May this partnership bring stability and maybe a few heirs." Laughter rippled around the table. Mark forced a polite smile, but Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. She tapped her glass once, the sound crisp and deliberate. "Let us toast," she said calmly, "to integrity. It is rarer than profit and far more valuable." Her tone silenced the laughter instantly. Mark felt a surge of respect for her that he could not explain. Later that night, as music played and guests moved to the dance floor, Eleanor turned to him. "We should dance. It will look natural." Mark hesitated. "I do not dance." Quote, "Neither do I," she said, extending her hand. "But appearances must be kept." He took her hand carefully. They moved in slow circles under the chandelier, surrounded by murmurs and soft piano notes. At first it was awkward, mechanical. Then something changed. Her hand relaxed in his shoulders eased. Their eyes met. The room seemed to fade, leaving only the rhythm of their steps and the quiet sound of her breathing. When the song ended, Eleanor stepped back. Her voice was steady, but softer than usual. "You are improving at pretending." Mark smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm not pretending anymore." For a brief moment, she looked as though she wanted to answer, but she turned away. "We should leave before the press starts asking questions." On the drive home, the silence between them felt different, charged, uncertain. The city lights reflected off the car windows like flickers of another world. When they reached the estate, Eleanor dismissed the chauffeur and walked toward the garden terrace. Mark followed quietly. The night air was cool, the sky washed clean by rain. She leaned against the stone railing, staring into the dark horizon. "You handled yourself well tonight," she said softly. "They were watching for weakness. You gave them none." "Is that what all this is about?" he asked. "Proving something to them?" Her gaze stayed on the distance. "To them, to myself. To a world that never forgives a woman for being powerful and alone." Mark stepped closer. "You are not alone anymore." Eleanor turned her head slightly, meeting his eyes. For a heartbeat, her mask slipped. He saw the exhaustion beneath her poise, the ache she kept hidden from everyone. She looked away first. "Go inside, Mark. You have done enough for tonight." He wanted to stay, to tell her that her loneliness felt like his own, but he simply nodded and walked back toward the house. From the terrace, Eleanor watched him disappear through the doorway. The wind tugged gently at her hair as she whispered to the night, "You have done more than you know." For the first time since their arrangement began, both of them realized that somewhere between duty and disguise, something real had begun to take root, and neither of them was ready for what it meant. The next morning, the mansion felt unusually quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the air cool and the garden washed clean. Mark Davis found himself at the breakfast table alone, a note resting beside his plate. At the office, meeting with the legal team. Back by evening, he stared at the neat handwriting for a moment, then folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket. The housekeeper appeared with a polite smile. "Mrs. Brooks asked that you rest today, sir. The gala was a long night." "Thank you," he said, though rest was the last thing he wanted. For the first time since the wedding, Mark had an entire day to himself. He wandered through the estate, ending up in the sunroom overlooking the garden. Dust motes drifted through the light, and on a small side table sat an old photo album. He opened it out of curiosity. Inside were black and white photos of a young Eleanor Brooks, laughing beside a man who looked like the world belonged to them, her late husband. Every picture radiated a warmth Mark had never seen in her face now. He traced a finger over one image where she held a paintbrush, color on her hands, sunlight spilling across her smile. "You used to paint," he murmured. The sound of footsteps made him turn. Eleanor stood in the doorway, holding her phone loosely, her expression unreadable. "You found that," she said quietly. "I was not snooping," Mark replied quickly. "It was just open." Her eyes softened slightly. "He was my husband. We built everything together. When he died, I built walls instead." Quote. Mark closed the album gently. Walls can protect, but they also keep the light out. Eleanor did not answer at first. She walked to the window, her voice low. "You sound like him when you say things like that." "Maybe that is why you chose me," he said before he could stop himself. She turned, surprised. "Maybe," she whispered. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence felt fragile but not uncomfortable. When she finally broke it, her tone was different, softer, almost hesitant. "I have another event next week. It is personal, a charity I founded years ago for young artists. I would like you to come with me." Mark smiled slightly. "Of course, I would like that." The following weekend, they stood in a modest art gallery downtown. The place was bright and alive with color. Paintings lined the walls, each signed by students whose names Mark did not recognize. Eleanor moved among them with quiet pride, stopping often to talk with the artists. Mark noticed how her face changed here, lighter, more human. A young woman approached them, eyes shining. "Mrs. Brooks, thank you for funding our program. Without you, none of this would exist." Eleanor smiled gently. "Talent deserves a chance. That is all I ever wanted to give." As they walked out later, Mark said softly, "You looked happy in there." Eleanor glanced at him, her eyes warm. "Maybe for a moment I forgot to act." They drove home in near silence, the kind that carries meaning rather than distance. When they arrived, the sky had turned gold with the setting Sunday. Eleanor stopped at the base of the stairs, turning to him. "You reminded me tonight of who I used to be," she said. "Thank you for that." Mark's voice was quiet. "You do not need to be someone else for me." She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "Good night, Mr. Davis." Go. But when she walked away, he could still feel the warmth of her words. For the first time since their marriage began, it no longer felt like a contract between strangers. It felt like the fragile beginning of something neither of them dared to name. A week later, tension crept into the Brooks estate, like a storm that no one could see but everyone could feel. Mark Davis noticed it first in the way Eleanor Brooks spoke. Her calm voice now carried a sharpness that had not been there before. The staff moved carefully around her, whispering that a major deal at Brooks Holdings was being challenged by the board. Mark found her in her study one evening, pacing in front of the window. "They are calling for an audit," she said flatly. "Reynolds and a few others are pushing for my removal as chairwoman. They think the foundation money was misallocated." Mark frowned. "That is ridiculous. You have dedicated your entire life to that foundation." Kodo. She poured herself a drink, her hands steady but her voice strained. In their eyes, a woman in charge is a liability. And marrying someone like you gave them ammunition. They see you as proof that I have lost control. The words stung more than he expected. You mean because I am not one of them? I mean because you are human, she said sharply, then sighed, her tone softening. They will not hesitate to use you to discredit me. I am sorry, Mark. I should have foreseen this. Quote, he took a step closer. Then let me help. Let me stand beside you. Her eyes met his, conflicted. This is not your fight. It became my fight the day I said I do. For a long moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then she turned away. Tomorrow's board meeting will decide everything. They are planning to challenge my leadership. If they win, everything we have built will be gone. The next morning, the conference room at Brooks Holdings was filled with suits and cold ambition. Eleanor entered first, composed as always, followed by Mark. Every head turned. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Reynolds, seated at the end of the table, smiled thinly. Mrs. Brooks, we appreciate your time. Though I must say, bringing your husband to a corporate meeting seems unconventional. Eleanor's voice was calm. My husband is a legal advisor. He is here to observe. Reynolds smirked. Ah, so that is what we are calling it. Quote. Mark's jaw tightened, but Eleanor placed a hand lightly on his arm, a silent reminder to stay composed. The meeting dragged on with accusations and spreadsheets projected like weapons. Reynolds claimed financial discrepancies, misused funds, and emotional decision-making. Finally, Eleanor stood. You speak of numbers, she said evenly, but you forget the purpose behind them. The foundation funds schools, hospitals, and art programs for children who would otherwise have nothing. If you want to punish me for caring, then do it. But do not pretend it is about ethics. The room went silent. Even Reynolds hesitated. Mark rose beside her. If you need a scapegoat, use me, he said clearly. Blame the marriage, blame the distraction, but do not blame the woman who gave everything to this company. Eleanor's head turned sharply toward him, eyes wide. The room buzzed with murmurs. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. That will not be necessary, he muttered. The vote was taken. The motion to remove her failed by a single count. Eleanor kept her posture straight until the room emptied, then finally exhaled. In the car afterward, she stared out the window. You did not have to do that, she said softly. I know, Mark replied, but I wanted to. For the first time in days, she smiled a small, weary smile, but real. You broke one of the contract rules today. Which one? He asked. The one about not interfering in my personal life. Quote. He looked at her, a quiet warmth in his voice. Maybe it stopped being personal the moment I started caring. The car moved through the rain-washed streets, and for the first time, the silence between them felt like a promise rather than a distance. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the Brooks estate, cutting through the last traces of the storm. For the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter. Eleanor Brooks sat at the breakfast table with a cup of tea, her posture relaxed but thoughtful. Across from her, Mark Davis read quietly from the newspaper, pretending not to glance at her every few seconds. Finally, she broke the silence. You surprised me yesterday, she said softly. He folded the paper. Good surprise or bad? Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. Both. You risk your reputation for mine. That was not part of our agreement. Mark smiled faintly. Neither was falling for someone I was supposed to protect on paper. Her eyes flickered upward, startled. He continued gently. I do not regret it, Eleanor. Not a single thing. She exhaled, setting her cup down. I built this entire life on control, and you came in and turned it upside down. Maybe it needed turning, he said. You saved everyone but yourself. Eleanor stood and walked toward the window, watching the morning light spill across the garden. When my husband died, I promised myself never to feel that kind of pain again. That promise kept me safe, but it also kept me alone. Mark rose slowly and joined her. Then maybe it is time to make a new promise. She looked at him, and for once, there was no guarded expression, only truth. What would that promise be? That we stop pretending, he said softly. No contracts, no performances, no distance, just us. Her voice trembled just slightly. And if I say yes? He smiled, eyes warm. Then we start over, not as Mrs. Brooks and Mr. Davis, but as two people who finally learned to choose each other. Eleanor studied him for a long, quiet moment. Then she reached into the drawer beside the window seat and pulled out a thin folder, their marriage contract. Without hesitation, she tore it in half. The paper ripped cleanly through the center of her signature. Mark let out a quiet breath, relief mixing with disbelief. That is it then. No more rules. No more rules, she agreed. He stepped closer, resting his hand gently on hers. Then I guess this is where the real marriage begins. Eleanor smiled for the first time without restraint. It seemed so. Outside, the last drops of rain clung to the glass as sunlight broke through, filling the room with gold. The woman who once lived by terms and clauses now stood free beside the man who taught her how to feel again. And in that quiet, perfect moment, neither of them needed to say another word. Their silence finally meant love. 6 months later, the Brooks Foundation hosted its annual charity gala, but this year felt different. The ballroom glowed with soft golden lights and laughter filled the air. Not the sharp, careful kind that used to echo through these events, but real laughter. Eleanor Brooks moved gracefully through the crowd in a deep sapphire gown, her hand resting comfortably on Mark Davis's arm. The whispers that once surrounded them had faded into admiration. The city's elite had learned that power and dignity could look like kindness. The woman once called untouchable now smiled easily, and beside her, the man who had once been dismissed as a mistake had become her greatest strength. When the speeches began, Eleanor took the stage. The room fell silent. "A year ago," she began, "this foundation was nearly lost. I was nearly lost. But what I learned is simple control cannot build connection, and pride cannot build trust. What builds both is compassion. And sometimes, compassion looks like giving someone a chance." She turned her gaze toward Mark, her smile soft but certain. "I was given that chance." Applause filled the room, long and genuine. Mark felt his chest tighten, pride mixing with disbelief. When the music started again, Eleanor returned to him, her eyes shining. "You were supposed to stay out of the spotlight," she teased gently. "I tried," he said, smiling, "but you keep pulling me in." Later that night, the guests drifted away until only a few remained. Mark led Eleanor onto the empty dance floor, the same song that had played months ago beginning once more. This time, there was no pretending, no cameras, no audience, only them. As they danced slowly under the chandelier, Mark whispered, "Do you remember the first contract rule?" She nodded. "No romance." He smiled. "I am glad we broke that one." Eleanor laughed quietly, the sound soft as silk. "So am I." When the song ended, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold band, engraved with 2 words, "No rules." Her breath caught as he went down on one knee. "We started with signatures," he said softly, "but I want to start over with vows that mean something real. Will you marry me again, for real this time?" Eleanor's eyes glistened. She nodded once firmly. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and applause rose again from the staff watching quietly at the back of the hall, moved by what they saw. Under the warm light of the chandelier, they kissed. No contracts, no conditions, just 2 souls finally free. And as the music swelled, the story that began with a bargain ended with something far rarer, a love that had turned every rule into a promise.